Hey geeks and gamers, I'm back today to do another video on the 5th edition supplement races. Today I'll be covering the spirits and the treants. Group them together because they have a very similar aesthetic as far as their origin and purpose of being kind of a force of nature, something that is the energy, the arcane element, refusing to kind of leave where it's at. So we'll start with the spirit. Obviously, having kind of a visage into the other world is going to give them a bit more wisdom. They're usually evil aligned because they're doing whatever it takes to, usually they're trying to get back to being alive, or even just accumulate power so that they can spread their part of, at the off chance they are from the Shadow Isles. They're trying to spread that out and make the entire world kind of be the ethereal plane, since there's that bit of a sever. They definitely vary in size extremely, but I kind of group them all together as medium because we obviously span everything from someone as kind of twiggy as Karthus to someone as large as Scion. They have a 30-foot base speed, speak common and abyssal, and all get dark vision. They also get spirits internals, which makes it so they don't need to eat, drink, or breathe. We'll start with the first of the sub-races, the Spectre. This covers all of the ghosts, the different Thresh, Karthus, even someone like Senna. They get a little bit more intelligence, they're tricksterous, they're relying on kind of outplaying and outwitting their opponents. They get ethereal, which allows them to pass through non-living material for an amount of distance equal to 5 feet times their intelligence modifier totaled per day. This gives you a bit of flexibility in dungeons. This gives you the ability to retreat, as you can pass through several feet of stone, brick, anything really, pass back into the other room, scout ahead a little bit and retreat if you have to. There's a lot of options as far as that goes. The next thing that we have is Damnation, which, being within 30 feet of an enemy when they die, reveals their soul to you, much like Thresh's ability. If you reach out to collect it, you have to be within touching range, obviously. You can collect it and trade that in at certain shops for rare upgrades and loot. This is a system I'll be inputting a little bit later in a separate video. At the time being, I've just been treating it as a DM rule of unique type of a player traded in some and got Spectre goggles that allow them to see ghosts normally while wearing them, which is always kind of nice, just getting some kind of ghost themed abilities, some different things that can really amplify the aesthetic of the spirit hunter, the spirit seeker type vibe that they can really build if you do it correctly. You could also give the example of something like Thresh's Lantern, which allows you to extend out how far you're gathering souls from. The last ability that they get is Requiem, which is kind of a last shot similar to Karthus' ability, where upon reaching 0 HP, you may, as a reaction, cast one standard spell or standard attack, either of which is getting a bonus amount of damage equal to your intelligence modifier. Additionally, it's all dealt as necrotic damage, and immediately after you continue rolling death saves as normal, but this does give a bit of versatility. Maybe it's that final push to win the fight that you needed. Maybe it's even a lifesteal ability, like something like Vampiric Touch, that would give you a little bit of health back, keeping you from dying. Obviously you can only do it once per day, but either way it's still something that gives a lot of flexibility and a lot of different options. Going into the next one, we have the Undead. Obvious example being Scion, but there's tons of different types of undead characters throughout roleplay. I give them a little bit more constitution because they're usually a bit bruisier. They have that undead fortitude of their body being kind of, artificial almost. Their first ability that they're getting is Black Blood, which gives them an immunity to all necrotic damage and resistance to poison. that being the damage typing, not the status. They also get a weakness to radiant damage, though, giving them a bit more of that classic undead feel that 5th edition seems to kind of be leaning away from a lot, specifically with player races. I also gave them Glory and Death, which is while rolling death saves, you may still make 1 melee attack per round, as long as you're within reach of the enemy, giving you kind of a last stand thing where it discourages people from attacking you while you're rolling death saves, and it also can potentially help you win out the fight in a clinch moment where your team might be losing. The last ability is really more of an aesthetic one. It can definitely have its utility purposes, but it's just something that feels very interesting and very fun and allows this to play more than just brute characters, is Mangled Corpse, which is you can roll a performance with advantage to play dead as long as you're not within direct line of sight of enemies. So if you were to, say, go behind a wall or a box, you basically play dead and appear as a regular corpse to NPCs, giving you some escape tactics, some de-aggro, or even just the ability to get the jump on an enemy from them not realizing that you're still kicking. Going on to the last one is the Elemental, which obvious example would be Brand. They're a little bit more dexterous. They are arcane energy, basically manifesting into a physical form to the best of its ability, whether you be guided by some form of aspect, or maybe you are a spirit who happened to die in a rather tragic way. Maybe you were burned alive, or you ended up being poisoned to death. You are embodying that in which killed you and controlling it. There's a lot of different aesthetic routes it can go, but the first ability is Elemental Focus, which is kind of the baseline for the race as a whole, in which you choose what makes up your body and what your damage typing and resistances are. You have to pick any of the baseline elements. This includes, fire, cold, I believe acid, lightning, thunder. I might be forgetting them in there. Essentially, it's basically the magic damage typings minus necrotic and radiant. Outside that, you get to pick Elemental Mark as your next ability, which is you mark a target within 60 feet of you, making them weak to your elemental typing. This lasts for 1 minute and can be done a number of times per day equal to your Wisdom modifier. I was treating it as a bonus action. This is something I'm still a little bit unsure of as far as balance mechanics go, because it's really insane on casters at certain points, but it's also not crazy on a lot of the other classes, so it's definitely a case-to-case basis, and that'll have to be workshopped as we get some more testing done. Either way, the next and final ability is Elemental Pillar, which gives you a little bit of chip damage in case you're not a caster. It allows you to deal 1d4 of your damage in a 10-foot radius to somewhere within 60 feet of you, and can be cast a number of times per day equal to your Wisdom modifier. Okay. Moving on to the Treant. I definitely tried to take this in a different route than most people think of when they think of, RPG Treants as a whole, because they're usually brute juggernaut throwing rocks, the old cliche version of them. Whereas the League of Legends lore paints them as a very heavily nature-based kind of arcane protector, where we get Ivern, where we get Maokai. It's something where magic is at the very core of why they exist, and it feels wrong to ignore that. So I tried to give them a lot more utility and capability and magical prowess, almost like a druid or a ranger would have, making them very good rangers or druids, but also giving them a little bit of versatility, whether you want to play them as a rogue or a barbarian. They've definitely got a lot of options all around. They're obviously very charismatic, speaking to the trees and the animals around them and really communicating and being friendly in general most of the time. They also get a lot of wisdom, having been around for a long time. They don't reach adulthood until 100 years, but live for an extremely long lifespan, which I feel the need to mention considering not a lot of creatures live that long. They're usually lawful, as they have a deep connection to nature and balance, and on average would never go out of their way to destroy either of those things. They are, however, large-sized creatures and do only have a 25-foot movement speed. Being that big and being made out of bark, they're really doing their best to kind of get around at a speed that they can. They also get Common and Treant, which I've been treating as not only a language that allows them to speak obviously to other treants, but also to regular trees as long as they're still living, giving them a bit of kind of lore digging ability with that. Additionally, they also get Bark Skin, in which they can't equip any armor except for shields. However, you do get to add your charisma to your AC as natural armor, but you are also getting the trade-off of a weakness to fire. Makes a lot of sense. They're made out of bark. They also get Mask of the Wild, which you'll see a few times with some of the nature races, in which you can hide using light coverage as long as it's natural, foliage, heavy rain, falling snow, mystic cedra, with the assumption being if you stood still in a forest, most people aren't going to tell you apart from another tree, at least not at a quick glance. You also get Friend of the Forest, which gives you advantage on animal handling and also begins the game with proficiency in it. And then we start getting into some of the more magical abilities, starting with Brushmaker, which creates a 5 by 5 foot brush somewhere within 50 feet of you. This obviously counts as light natural coverage and can be done a number of times per day equal to your wisdom, giving you the ability to create your own cover, help your ally, your rogue, giving really a disengage or anything that you necessarily need it to be at the time. This is another ability that kind of depends on the day. I have, for the most part, been treating it as a bonus action because of the fact that it's so hyper-specific that it kind of forces them to get creative and then allows them to also combo with Mask of the Wild, using their standard action to hide if they so need to do so. The last ability is Sapling Toss, in which you can place or throw a sapling to somewhere within 10 feet of you, making it ready to charge. It remains there for 1 minute or until you use a bonus action to move it up to 10 additional feet. Once it comes into contact with an enemy or upon your command at moving the full 10 feet, it deals 1d4 damage in a 5-foot radius around it. And this can be done a number of times per day equal to your wisdom modifier, giving you a bit of chip damage. And obviously there is the old strat of setting up several of these in a bush since they last a minute, or even just setting up several of these in general to perform an ambush of some sort. It's not crazy damage, but it gives a little bit of utility, and depending on how the player decides to play it, it is an explosive of sorts. So I've let players blow off locks or potentially knock down doors, start a fire, what have you, because it is a magical explosion and it is by all definition just dealing, I was treating it as force damage so that it at least has a little bit of that arcane prowess and can't be negated as easily, kind of being a retribution of the force type thing. Either way, I hope both races have interest to you quite a lot. I hope that we can have a discussion going forward about things you like, things you don't. Leave a like, comment, ring the bell so you get notifications when I will be uploading on Saturdays and Sundays. And I will see you in the next adventure.